So, you were just born. Congratulations. Your mother just went through hours of labor in a wooden shack with no anesthesia, no doctor, and a midwife who's probably enslaved to there's no cake, no balloons, no baby shower with cute onesies. Because it's 1800, you're black, and you're in the American South. Which means, before you even take your second breath, guess what? Your life isn't yours anymore. You don't get a birth certificate. You get an inventory number. You're not a baby. You're an investment. Welcome to the world, kid. This is your official guide to being born into the most brutal system in American history. Let's begin. Today, when a baby is born, people celebrate. They post on Instagram. They send gifts. They argue over whose nose the baby has. When you were born in 1800 as an enslaved person, your owner calculated your future market value because legally, and I mean this literally, you were not a human being. You were chattel. That's the legal term. It means movable property, like a cow, or a chair, or a really expensive lamp that also picks cotton. You had no rights, not one. You couldn't vote, couldn't own anything, couldn't testify in court against a white person. You couldn't even legally learn to read because knowledge was dangerous. And God forbid you tried to defend yourself if someone hit you. That wasn't self-defense. That was destruction of property. You could be bought, sold, traded, rented out, or used as collateral for a loan. Your mother, also property. Your father, probably sold before you were born. Your name, given to you by the person who owns you, like naming a pet. And if they didn't like your name, they'd change it, because you didn't even own your own identity. Now, let's compare this to today. In 2025, Elon Musk can buy a social media platform, rename it, and destroy its value in months. In 1800, a plantation owner could do the exact same thing, except the platform was you, and the destruction was your entire bloodline. You think cancel culture is bad now? Back then, they could literally cancel your existence by writing you out of a will or selling you to someone 3 states away. And there was no appeals process. No lawyer, no judge who gave a damn. You were a line item on a balance sheet. People today talk about the American dream. Guess what funded it? It was you. The wealth of this nation, the factories, the railroads, the cities, was built on a foundation of stolen lives. And the people doing the stealing. They called it progress. They threw garden parties on your back and called it civilization. So no, you weren't born into opportunity. You were born into a system designed to extract every ounce of value from your bones until you died. And when you died, they didn't mourn. They just bought another slave. Because in America, you could always buy another one. You know how kids today have childhoods, like actual childhoods, toys, school, playdates, screen time debates. You didn't get that. You got a hoe and a lecture on obedience. Because in the world of slavery, childhood wasn't a phase. It was an internship for misery. Let's say you're 4 years old. In 2025, you'd be watching Bluey and learning shapes. In 1824, you're carrying water to the fields in the brutal summer heat. Your hands blister, your feet bleed, you're hungry, and when you cry, you get yelled at, or worse, because tears were considered disrespect, and disrespect got you hit. There were no participation trophies, no gentle parenting, no timeouts, just work. By the time you were 7 or 8, you were doing adult labor, picking cotton, feeding animals, cleaning the master's house. You worked from sunrise to sunset, and sometimes beyond. No weekends, no summer break, no snow days. If you were too slow, you got whipped. If you talked back, you got whipped. If you looked at someone wrong, you got whipped. There was a quote from Frederick Douglass, a man who escaped slavery and became one of the greatest voices for freedom. He said, "I have often been awakened at the dawn of day by the most heart-rending shrieks of an own aunt of mine, whom he used to tie up to a joist and whip upon her naked back, till she was literally covered with blood." That's what childhood looked like. And education. Forget it. In most southern states, it was illegal to teach an enslaved person to read or write. Why? Because literacy was power. If you could read about freedom. You could forge travel passes, write letters, organize rebellions. So they kept you illiterate on purpose. Imagine that. You grow up in a country that prides itself on freedom and enlightenment, and they make it a crime to teach you the alphabet. You can't read the Bible? They beat you with. Also, you can't write a letter to a loved one sold away. You can't even read the laws that enslave you. You're kept in the dark by design. And if you were caught learning, the punishment was severe: whipping, amputation of fingers. sailed to a more brutal plantation. Knowledge wasn't just discouraged, it was criminalized. So yeah, while white kids were going to school and learning Latin, you were being trained to accept your own dehumanization. They didn't teach you math, but you learned to count lashes. They didn't teach you history, but you learned that your past didn't matter. You learned that you weren't supposed to want anything, not freedom, not family, not even a full meal, because wanting was dangerous. And childhood, that was just the warm-up. Let's talk about your career, because yes, you had one. Except it wasn't a career, it was forced labor from birth to death. No salary, no benefits, no pension plan, just blood, sweat, and an early grave. In 2025, people complain about their jobs. Like, my boss is toxic, I'm burnt out, I deserve a raise. You know what you got? A beating if you stopped working. Your job, whether you were 5 or 50, was to make someone else rich. Cotton, tobacco, sugar, rice. These were the cash crops that built American wealth. And guess who harvested them? You, in fields so hot, people collapsed from heat stroke. With tools so crude, your hands bled daily. For hours so long, you forgot what rest felt like. Picking cotton alone was brutal. A single enslaved person was expected to pick 150 to 200 pounds a day. That's roughly 1,000 pounds a week. And if you didn't meet your quota, whipped. Too slow, still whipped. Too tired. Doesn't matter. Whipped. Cotton bolls have sharp edges. They cut your fingers raw. But you kept going because stopping meant punishment, and punishment could mean death. Now here's the kicker: the cotton you picked. It fueled the entire global economy. It was shipped to England, turned into fabric, sold worldwide. Factories in Massachusetts ran on Southern cotton. Factories in Europe ran on Southern cotton. The Industrial Revolution, that beautiful age of progress and innovation. Built on your back, literally. And what did you get in return? Rags to wear, scraps to eat, a dirt floor to sleep on. You were generating billions in today's dollars, and you couldn't afford shoes. Let's put this in modern terms. Imagine working for Amazon. You're packing boxes 14 hours a day. You're monitored, timed, punished for bathroom breaks. But instead of a paycheck, you get nothing. And if you complain, Jeff Bezos has you publicly whipped. That's what this was, except worse, because you didn't even get to quit. And let's not forget, your labor wasn't just economic, it was political. The South's entire power structure depended on you. Wealthy white families didn't work, they lived off your work. They threw lavish parties while you starved. They built universities with your hands. They funded churches with your stolen labor. And then they had the audacity to call themselves self-made. Self-made, off stolen lives. If Kylie Jenner calling herself self-made made people angry. Imagine an entire generation of plantation owners doing the same thing. Except, instead of a cosmetics company, it's human beings. And instead of Twitter backlash, it's just history ignoring it. So, yeah, your job wasn't a job. It was extraction. Of your body, your time, your humanity. And when you died from exhaustion, malnutrition, or violence, they replaced you. Because in their eyes, you were renewable, like timber or coal. Just another resource to burn through. Let's talk about family. You know, the thing that's supposed to be sacred, the foundation of society, love, support, stability. Yeah, you didn't get that. Because your family wasn't a family. It was a breeding operation. See? After the US banned the transatlantic slave trade in 1808, plantation owners had a problem. They couldn't legally import new enslaved people from Africa. So what did they do? They decided to grow their own. Congratulations, you're now part of a domestic production line. And your mother, she's not just your mother. She's an asset that produces more assets. Enslaved women were forced to have children whether they wanted to or not. Some were raped by their enslavers. Some were forced into marriages with other enslaved men to produce children faster, and those children were property the moment they were born. You didn't belong to your mother, you belonged to her owner. There's a reason the legal doctrine was called partus sequitur, ventrum, Latin for the child follows the condition of the mother. Translation: if your mother was enslaved, so were you. No matter who your father was, even if your father was the white man who enslaved your mother, you were still enslaved, still property, still sold. Now let's say you're 6 years old. You've got a mom, maybe a dad, siblings. You play together when the work is done. You share stories at night. For a moment, it almost feels normal. Then one morning, a white man in a suit shows up. He talks to your owner, money changes hands, and your mother is put in a wagon. She's screaming, you're screaming. Your owner doesn't care. He just sold her. Maybe to pay a debt, maybe because he's bored, maybe because cotton prices dropped. Doesn't matter. She's gone, and you will never see her again. This wasn't rare. This was common. Families were ripped apart constantly. Husbands sold away from wives, children torn from parents, siblings separated and scattered across states, and there was nothing you could do. No legal recourse, no court to appeal to. You couldn't sue for custody. You couldn't even write a letter, because remember, you weren't allowed to read or write. You just had to accept it and keep working, because grief wasn't a valid excuse to stop picking cotton. There are records, heartbreaking, gut-wrenching records, of enslaved people begging not to be sold. Mothers clutching their children. Fathers offering to work harder if their families could stay together. And the response, that's not how business works in 2025. We talk about work-life balance. In 1840, your life was someone else's work. And if separating you from everyone you loved made them $500 richer, done, sold, gone. Even after the Civil War, formerly enslaved people spent decades trying to reunite with family members. They placed ads in newspapers looking for my mother, sold in 1848 in Virginia. Last seen in New Orleans, please help. Some never found them because slavery didn't just steal labor. It stole bloodlines, it shattered kinship. It turned love into a liability. Because the more you loved someone, the more power your enslaver had over you. So yeah, your family wasn't protected. It was inventory. And inventory gets liquidated whenever the market demands it. Let's talk about Sunday, the Lord's Day, the day of rest, worship, reflection. You know what you got? A sermon about obedience delivered by the same people who beat you the other 6 days. Because nothing says love thy neighbor like owning him. Christianity was everywhere in the South. Churches on every corner, Bibles in every home. Enslavers loved to call themselves God-fearing Christians, and they used religion to justify everything. There were preachers, actual preachers, who stood in pulpits and said slavery was biblical. They'd quote Ephesians 6-5, slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear. They'd quote Leviticus, cite Old Testament patriarchs who owned servants. They'd say, God designed a hierarchy, and in that hierarchy, we are your shepherds. Translation, God wants us to own you. It was theological gaslighting on a mass scale, and it worked, because if God himself endorsed slavery, who were you to resist? Some enslaved people were even forced to attend their enslaver's church, sitting in the back, listening to white preachers explain why suffering was holy, why enduring abuse was Christ-like, why freedom was selfish. And after the sermon, church auctions. That's right, people were sold at churches on holy ground. Right after communion, imagine that. You're told to love your enemy, turn the other cheek, forgive endlessly. And then you watch your neighbor get sold to the highest bidder in the churchyard. Not all Christians supported slavery. Quakers, abolitionists, and some northern denominations actively fought it. But in the South, the dominant religious narrative was clear. Slavery was God's will, and if you resisted, you weren't just defying your master, you were defying God. Some enslavers even held prayer meetings on plantations. They'd gather enslaved people, read scripture, and then remind them, be good, be obedient. Your reward is in heaven. Translation, suffer. Now, maybe we'll treat you better when you're dead. And if you dared to interpret the Bible differently, if you found hope in Exodus, in Moses leading his people out of bondage, that was heresy, that was rebellion, and rebellion got you killed. Frederick Douglass once wrote, I love the pure, peaceable, and impartial Christianity of Christ. I therefore hate the corrupt, slaveholding, women-whipping, cradle-plundering, partial and hypocritical Christianity of this land. Let that sink in. The same religion used to justify love and liberation was twisted into a weapon of oppression, and the people wielding it, they slept soundly because they believed God was on their side. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. So maybe you've had enough. You're tired of the beatings, the starvation, the separation. You want out. You want freedom, so you decide to run. Good luck, because escaping slavery wasn't just hard, it was a death sentence if you failed. First, let's talk logistics. You have no map, no money, no food. You don't know where you're going, just that it's north. You travel at night, sleep during the day, you follow the North Star. Rivers, whispers of safe houses. You walk through swamps, forests, freezing cold or brutal heat. your feet bleed, you're starving, exhausted, and the entire time you're being hunted, because the moment your owner realizes you're gone, he calls the slave catchers. These were professional bounty hunters, armed on horseback with dogs. Dogs trained to track human scent. If they caught you, best case, you're dragged back, publicly whipped, and branded with an R for runaway. Worst case, you're killed on the spot as an example. And it wasn't just the catchers. Regular white people could stop you, demand to see your papers. If you did, you'd have a pass, a written document from your enslaver saying you had permission to travel. You were assumed to be a runaway, and you'd be detained, beaten, returned. Even in free states, you weren't safe. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 made it federal law to return escaped slaves. That means even if you made it to New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, if someone recognized you, you could be sent back. No trial, no defense, just chains and a one-way trip south. There were people who helped, of course. The Underground Railroad, a secret network of abolitionists and safe houses, people like Harriet Tubman, who made 13 missions into the South and rescued around 70 people. She carried a gun, not to shoot slave catchers, but to shoot anyone in her group who wanted to turn back, because if you turned back, you could betray the route, and that would get everyone killed. So yeah, escaping required luck, endurance, help from strangers who were risking their own lives, and an iron will to survive even if you made it north. You lived in constant fear of bounty hunters, betrayal, re-enslavement. Some people made it to Canada, true freedom. But most didn't. Most were caught within days, and the punishment was designed to break not just your body, but your spirit. You'd be whipped in front of everyone. As a warning, as a reminder, this is what happens when you want freedom. But people still tried, because even a slim chance at freedom was worth risking everything. And that will to resist, to run, to fight for your own humanity. That's what they couldn't break, no matter how many dogs they sent. So the year is 1861. Tensions have been building for decades, and finally war breaks out. The Union versus the Confederacy, North versus South, and everyone says it's about you, about slavery, about freedom. But here's the truth. You're the excuse, not the cause. Because this war is about power, economics, states' rights to own human beings. But let's be clear, the North wasn't fighting to free you out of the goodness of their hearts. Abraham Lincoln himself said, "If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it." Let that sink in. The guy on the $5 bill, the one we call the Great Emancipator, literally said he'd keep you enslaved if it helped him politically. The Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, it only freed slaves in Confederate states, meaning states the Union didn't control. It was a military strategy, not a moral awakening. Slaves in border states, states that stayed in the Union, still enslaved. So yeah, you're watching a war rage around you. Hundreds of thousands dying, and you're stuck wondering, is this actually about me? Or am I just a political prop? Spoiler, you're a prop. Now don't get me wrong. Enslaved people didn't just sit around waiting to be saved, they self-emancipated. The moment Union troops got close, enslaved people fled to their lines. They became spies, scouts, laborers, soldiers. Over 180,000 black men fought for the Union. They fought in segregated units under white officers for lower pay. And they weren't even guaranteed freedom for their families. But they fought anyway because they knew if the Confederacy won, slavery would continue. If the Union won, maybe there was a chance. And after 4 brutal years, the Union won, slavery was abolished, the 13th Amendment passed, you're free. On paper, congratulations. Now what? So it's 1865, the war's over, you're free, finally. No more beatings, no more auctions, no more masters. You can go wherever you want, work for yourself, build a life, right wrong. Because freedom in America came with fine print, and that fine print was written by people who still hated you. Let's start with the basics. You're free, but you have no money, no land, no education, no job prospects, and nowhere to go. The government could have helped. There were proposals to give formerly enslaved people land, 40 acres and a mule. A chance to actually build something, but guess what happened? President Andrew Johnson, a Confederate sympathizer, vetoed it. And instead, that land was given back to former slave owners. So the people who enslaved you got reparations, you got nothing. Instead, you got sharecropping, which was basically slavery with a paycheck you'd never see. Here's how it worked. You rent land from your former enslaver. You grow crops. You owe him rent, seeds, tools, food. At the end of the season, you settle up, except the math is always rigged. You're told you owe more than you earned, so you're in debt. And you can't leave until the debt is paid, which it never is. Congratulations, you're enslaved again, just with extra steps. And if you tried to leave, you'd be arrested for vagrancy, the crime of being poor and black, or for breach of contract. Then you'd be leased out to a plantation or factory as convict labor, which was legal under the 13th Amendment. You know that line? Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime. That exception? That's the loophole. And southern states drove a truck through it. They arrested black people for anything: loitering, reckless eyeballing, talking back, then leased them to plantations, mines, railroads. Tens of thousands of black people were re-enslaved this way, worked to death, and it was legal. Then came Jim Crow, a whole system of laws designed to keep you in your place. You couldn't vote, poll taxes, literacy tests, violence at polling stations. You couldn't live where you wanted, redlining sundown towns. You couldn't eat, drink, or sit where white people did. Separate water fountains, separate schools, separate everything. And if you violated these laws, you'd be beaten, arrested, lynched. Yes, lynched. Between 1880 and 1940, over 4,000 black people were lynched in the South, hung from trees, burned alive, tortured, often for crimes like looking at a white woman, being too successful, not stepping off the sidewalk fast enough. And white crowds would gather. They'd take photos, sell postcards. Families brought their kids. It was a spectacle. A reminder, you're still not equal. So yeah, freedom didn't mean justice. It didn't mean equality. It didn't even mean safety. It meant you were technically no longer property, but functionally, you were still trapped in a system designed to exploit and terrorize you. And that system lasted well into the 20th century. Through Reconstruction, through Jim Crow, through the Civil Rights Movement. Echoes of it exist today. Mass incarceration, redlining, wealth gaps, the same structures, just rebranded. So when people say slavery ended in 1865, yeah, legally, but the effects, they never stopped. So you made it. You now know what it was like to be born into slavery in America. And if some of this felt uncomfortable to hear, good, it should, because this isn't ancient history. This was 160 years ago. There are people alive today whose grandparents were enslaved. The wealth built on slavery still exists. The systems designed to oppress still function. And yet, walk into most American classrooms and you'll get the sanitized version. Slavery was bad. Lincoln freed the slaves. MLK gave a speech. Everything's fine now, but it's not fine, because we've never fully reckoned with what happened, never paid reparations, never truly apologized. We just moved on and pretended the foundation wasn't built on bones. So the next time someone says, "Why are we still talking about this?" or "That was so long ago," or "Just get over it," remember, you can't heal what you won't acknowledge. And America still hasn't acknowledged the full weight of what it did. But now you know, and you can't unsee it, so share it, teach it, refuse to let it be forgotten. Because the people who lived through this, they deserve to be remembered, not as victims, but as survivors, as resistors, as human beings who endured the unendurable and still fought for a future. Their future is our present. Don't let it be forgotten.